So today I'm joined by Sam and Nigel from Beecard. Can we start with you introducing yourselves and just explaining how you've got to where you are as members of the Bubble community?
I'll go first?
Yes.
My name's Nigel Godfrey, and I'm the CTO of Beecard, getbeecard.com. I came into Bubble in probably 2015 with an idea and some impetus from having worked in my first startup. I'd worked in it, and it was all hands to the pump in there. You know, whatever I could do to find tools to build reports or whatever, I would do so. So off the back of that, I realised actually technology was hugely come on since I'd been initially involved, and via a number of things. I discovered Bubble in 2015 and built my first app in Bubble, and it looked hideous.
That's it.
Yes,
that's going to stop.
It really looked bad, but it did work. And Sam and I've known each other for a long time, and I've been at every opportunity telling her about all of the kind of various no-code tools that I use, particularly Bubble and.
Yeah, so compared to Nigel, I'm quite a newbie to no code and Bubble, but when Nigel introduced it to me back in the middle of the pandemic, so 2020, for the specific project that was Beecard, I actually loved it so much, and the potential. I've actually retrained, and now I'm actually coding in Bubble myself for my own business and for others. So it's been quite a from that initial introduction, it's actually changed my working life massively. So, which is we owe quite a lot to Bubble.
We do.
Great. Let's find out a little bit more about Beecard. What's your elevator pitch? What is Beecard?
So Beecard is a gift card for children's activities and classes in the UK. So you can get your Beecard and spend it at different classes nationwide. So it's gifting children's activities and therefore gifting all the many benefits of children's activities. So it's a first in that niche sector. It was an idea that I had, probably 7-8 years ago now, and it was using Bubble amongst other things that actually made it possible within a sort of sensible budget. That was the key. So my existing business has been in children's activities for 16 years. So it was a new product in a sector that I was already within, and already had a market and a customer base in. So I roped Nigel in to help on the technical side of things, and you call it a Frankenstein, didn't you? Frankenstein monster of plugging various different things together with Bubble at the centre of it, to enable Beecard to happen. Although interestingly, and you might want to pick up from here actually, Nigel, it wasn't Bubble we started with, was it?
No, we actually started on Glide. So we built the earliest iteration on Glide, just as a temporary. I wonder if we can get it to work really quickly. So how can we get our MVP? How can we get our MVP? And we thought it would be a couple of months, and actually Glide got us through the first 18 months. And it wasn't until we wanted to build some more. We wanted more integration. We wanted to be able to do some more complex API integration with some of our back end stuff. But so we built the thing on Glide, and Glide back then was just mobile only, and it was great because it really just focuses you on it makes you make it simple, whereas Bubble, you can just go off and build anything you like, whereas Glide is like, right, it has to look like this. Well, what if we don't like it? No, this is what you've got this layout or this layout. Which one do we like most? We like this one. Put some colours on it. But to be absolutely fair to Glide, it got us through actually working for 18 months, working pretty well. So it was good.
And then we got. We were lucky to get an Innovate UK grant, so that enabled us to move from Glide to Bubble.
Yes.
So we were able to get a bit more of Nigel's time, and we also brought in someone else as well. So that did enable us to sort of take the the leap. It also paid for other things, not just the tech side of things, but it was that enabled us to really add in more functionality, which is why we needed Bubble to enable us to do that.
And just out of interest, how did you approach that decision to change platforms? Like, you must have been thinking about the amount of time and cost to invest in it, and you must have felt that there would be a lot of benefits with moving over to Bubble. Can you just unpack that a little bit, please?
I think it was a sort of technical stuff that sort of hung around everything. So it was obviously gliding. We had some stuff on Airtable as well for some of the admin. So it was very much that patchwork, Frankenstein, Wizard of Oz, whatever you call it, kind of prototype. It worked. It was a real working thing, but we had to work quite hard to get the bits to work together. So what Bubble helped us to do was bring some of the disparate bits and pieces together, and also to expand what we were doing in terms of some of the add-ons. So and it's very basic. We have a website that sells gift cards, and you can sell a gift card at £1 or £10 or £100 or whatever, and then you get it and you get a code. So that bit's easy. Yeah, that bit's easy. That bit's easy. You don't need Bubble for that. But the other side, we've got the other side of this marketplace. So effectively, it's a two-sided marketplace. But it is a two-sided marketplace. But the activity providers, we needed what we found in the early days. So we had the product, and the difficulty we had was building up the supply side of the marketplace. So the activity providers who are desperately in need of no-code tools and technology, because they are so hamstrung by their technology providers. I mean, we know a lot of the tech providers, but they're quite slow-moving. And when you say, "Hey, can we just integrate this?" It's just, look, we can just integrate this. Could you do this? Could you do this? They were always no, or it's going to cost them £10,000. So, despite the fact that via Bubble, we can provide a REST API, so it's really easy to do. And one of our providers, one of the technology providers in this space that do the sort of booking systems, we provided it's going to get we're going to get very techie very quickly here. So
sure.
Bubble allowed us to provide basically a REST API into our app, and we provided it to some traditional developers down in Australia, and we used Postman to provide over the top to give us all of the documentation and stuff, and we look really professional. So nobody twigs that it's because everything's over the top, and it's you can do this and Postman put. So you can do all the clever stuff, but nobody twigged that this was just we were not developers here. So they integrated into their system so that. If you happen to use your booking system via ClassBiz, what you can do is you go on and it's just integrated in the same way that Stripe is integrated or PayPal is integrated or anything like that. It's just like, do you want to use this, or this? Oh, and do you want to use Beecard? And it's really quite simple. It's that kind of integration at the back end that Bubble allows us to do. But that's pretty technical stuff, and we needed some time and money to be able to implement those kind of things. And we have other ways of helping our activity providers get their money without having to go through a really complicated process. So we've got concierge services where we can do it for you, and we've got manual redemptions. So we needed to build up a whole kind of bit in the back end for our activity providers. Whereas that kind of front end for the grandparents or the family or whatever of the kids, that's the easy bit, but that's the visible bit, and that's the bit that's beautiful and lovely. And Sam Sam's done some fantastic designs on that. It's that back end technical stuff.
Yeah, having those a whole suite of solutions, because we're dealing with hundreds, if not thousands, of micro businesses. That some of them are using the available booking systems in the sector, but a lot of them aren't, and there are probably half a dozen of those booking systems anyway. So, and we're only integrated fully with one. So, it's, like Nigel said, it's providing 3 or 4 different solutions to manage the redemption side of things, and the payment side of things as well. So, yeah, it was that was the tricky bit that we needed to address, and that's what we did with the Innovate UK grant.
Yes, there's a lot of because it's not really our money, so the accounting side of it, or the legal and the accounting side of it, it's just one of those bits which you think, we knew we were going to be hard when we got into it, but it was a lot harder than we thought, because you have to kind of ring fence the money. So if somebody buys a gift card for £100, you can't just stick it in your own bank account. You have to do. But then there's Stripe fees that you have to pay up here. So we have the accounting, the double entry accounting that goes on between, we use Xero, but the sort of the little bits of money that flow around all the time to make everything balanced is quite complicated. But that's that's Xero. There's a lot of Zapier in there as well, although we're thinking about maybe moving off of Zapier. But there's a lot of stuff in the back office.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate so much both of you sharing the detail, because I speak to Bubble coaching clients, and kind of all different stages, from having discovered Bubble 2 days ago to they've been building in their spare time for 6 months. And I think what you perfectly demonstrated there is you can have an idea and you begin to flesh it out, but then when you begin to build it, like there's stuff is multiplied by 10 or 100, the amount of things you have to consider, and then your time is multiplied up by that figure just as much to build all of that. So you mentioned about a grant in the kind of indie hacker space, no code. People talk about getting investment rounds or bootstrapping. What's been your experience with those kind of different approaches with Beecard?
So, well, I think we were kind of lucky in that because of the pandemic, there was a bit more money floating around to help, using innovation to help sectors, business sectors, get through the pandemic and come out the other side. So that's what we were. I think it was just pure luck with the timing more than anything. And it wasn't a massive, we're not talking millions or anything. That wasn't a massive grant. It was relatively small, but it was certainly enough. But it wouldn't have been if we weren't using Bubble.
Yes.
And some of the other tools that Nigel's talked about. So, it could have been easily, if we used more traditional techniques, a lot more money that we would have needed. And I think, looking back on the grant application, we talked about no code within, and what we were wanting to do and how we're going to do it. And I'm sure that helped, and that they could see they were getting such value for money, because you have to prove that, because it's taxpayers' money, effectively, that you are giving value for money. So definitely going down the no code route massively helped with that. So yeah, it was timing, but also using something that was not just an innovative product, but an innovative way of doing it. So I think that really, really helped us, because whilst there was a bit more money sloshing around for innovation, I think it was still a hard process. There was still, I can't remember the numbers, but it was massively oversubscribed. I think it was probably like 12% of people got.
Yes,
grant. It was really small numbers, so we did really well. Even though it's sort of maybe been a bit easier to get it, but it's tough. We have gone for another grant application since, and we didn't get it. So it's it's not easy to get that sort of funding. But that's the only experience sort of that I've had of additional funding with Bubble.
I've worked with. I haven't directly, using Bubble, gone for any everything I've done outside of Beecard has been totally bootstrapped. but I've worked with some of the clients, sort of consultancy clients I've worked with have been going through. I've been going through the various. One of our clients is going through.
Yeah, we're working with some at the moment, aren't we?
CC at the moment.
Yeah.
And they've got an app. I'd love to be in that. I'd love to be in that investor meeting where they've effectively, we've got something that totally works. And they've got clients, and so it's B2B, so they've got some reasonably chunky MRR going on, and it's costing a few $100 a month maybe to run it, and to be in that investor meeting. Go, well, what's your MRR? Well, how much is it costing? Well, we're paying whatever. It's not a high volume one, so we can keep the bubble. We can keep the bubble cost down at the moment because it's not an app that you're in all the time, and we're using some of the ancillary services to other services that scale as their client base scales. But would that not be great to go? We get this in, and our run rate. Our run rate is 1, 2, 3 years in terms of the amount of money that they get in. Is like it's a great place to be, and I've seen since I started working with clients for like sort of 4 or 5 years, just the change in the way that particularly VCs view no code or just view different tools other than just getting a bunch of people to code it up for you. And initially, I think it was very skeptical. And now I'm really bullish about the fact that it's almost I would like to see VCs going, well, why are you getting some people to code it and provide it across? Why didn't you try and get a bit of money at this? I can't remember what the word is, and actually Bubble has used it itself, isn't it? It's like strap funding or something like that. So you bootstrap the first bit of it. So you bootstrap up to X, and then after that you go for the funding. So you've got this actual proper real business that you can point at to go, look, we make money, we make profit here. This is not, this is what we spend. And I think I'm reasonably certain that's what Bubble themselves did, didn't they? Because they were bootstrapped up to whatever. And again, that for Josh and Emmanuel, that must have been what a good investor thing is. Like, look, we have 1 million people using this app, and where did you get the money from? Well, this is our first round. That's got to be any investor's got to just go, okay, no, right, you are serious. I want some of this, and no wonder they got, no wonder they got it. And also, no wonder, I'm sure, maybe you're the same if you use Bubble. Bubble's always following me around with ads on Facebook or things like that. And there's a current one about didn't somebody get 267 million in seed funding recently?
I didn't see that, but that sounds very impressive.
One at 260, there's one at 7 million. That was Here.co, and they're really early stage of Bubble, and they got 7 million pre-seed on something that was just built, on a relatively low-cost platform.
Yes, so you could be spending that $29 a month, and then maybe $10-20 extra dollars for emails. Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? So you've listed off a load of elements that would be appealing to VCs. What else would you say? And you've mentioned kind of rapid development. You mentioned Bubble being able to be the hub for all these additional services. Is there anything else that you'd add to a question along the lines of what you love about building with Bubble?
Well,
we have slightly different experiences. You love Bubble.
Well, yes, because I'm new to it, so I'm still in that honeymoon phase, I think. But I'm nowhere near as deep into Bubble as Nigel has to be with all the integrations you do. You are so deep into it. But it's what you said already. Fundamentally, it's the fact that you can turn an idea into something real so quickly, and you haven't got to spend an absolute fortune or wait for more traditional tech to have the time. And as someone who my background years and years ago is technology. But we're talking very traditional mainframe type tech. So I've had to totally, I can't really apply a lot of it to Bubble, but relatively easily I've been able to get up to the point where I can create what I want to within Bubble. And I've gone on to expand that, I do stuff in Webflow as well now. So it's enables someone who's not a real techie, but has a sort of leaning that way and fairly analytical to actually be able to turn my ideas into reality in my own business without employing, a tech team or outsource it to a tech team. So that for me is totally, it's amazing. I'm not saying it's easy, and as someone who hasn't got that sort of type of mindset or background wouldn't be able to do it, but it's something that could be trained quite easily into a small or even a large organization. I think for me that's the most exciting bit, is taking what we all know as startups and more entrepreneurial types to much bigger organizations. And in fact, we're talking to a reasonably mid-sized insurance group about the potential of using things like Bubble to speed up their own innovation and do it very quickly and test ideas very quickly without spending absolute fortune. So it's really amazing when you see just you've lit that spark and it's like, really, I can do that. And once someone gets it, they totally get it, and that's amazing. It's that potential to go beyond just startup and new idea and take it into very traditional industry. That's going to be the next big wave. And if you're in a big corporation and you get this idea, you're going to be total leading edge on this one.
Yeah, definitely.
So that for me is the next big thing for no code and for Bubble.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam. So Nigel, because you've got all of these years of experience, can I push you for maybe an answer that someone wouldn't expect or have heard before about what's the real strength, the love of building a bubble?
So I'm well out of the honeymoon period, and Bubble and I have a sometimes strained relationship. We love each other, and we're going to stay with each other, but at times it is difficult. And but the bit I love about it is even if you are banging your head, and there's quite a lot of swearing quite often around being in Bubble, particularly when I'm doing. I'm really right down in the weeds of how am I going to get? It's usually API connectors or something that why is this not working? That there's a way. Bubble will always. You will always be able to do it. You might not enjoy the process of getting there, and actually once you've got there and you're making it working, go, yeah, I've got to work it. So you're just like, how did that take me so long to get to whatever it was that I needed to do? But you absolutely would not have been able to do it in the majority of other tools out there. They would just no, you cannot do that. There's sort of AppGyver and some of the other tools as well, which are brilliant, allow you that level of flexibility. But really, nothing else apart from Bubble allows you to stick to no code. I've got a lot of apps knocking around, and I've got 4 or 5 lines of JavaScript in 2 of them, just to do some really nasty JSON reconfiguration that other very, very smart people have provided with me. And I think that's what the best thing about Bubble is. It's true to its form, or it's true to it that it's true to being no code. A teeny tiny bit of code sometimes, but it doesn't. There's not that. I'm sure you mentioned WordPress. WordPress is like great. All right, now you need to write some code, and it just falls off a cliff, which is exactly what I found. How do I do that? Well, you write some code, and the first tool before Bubble, so between using BuddyBase and WordPress, I used a tool Paris or something like that, which was mostly low code. So we go, okay, I want to do this. I've got to map stuff, and the support were brilliant, but they just send me a bunch of JavaScript and go, oh yeah, you just do this, and that wasn't what I wanted. So long answer to it does what it says it's going to do, and there is always a way. There is always a way.
Brilliant. I'm just going to ask the other side of that question. I'd be fascinated again to hear your two different answers based on how long, Sam being in that honeymoon period. So biggest limitation from your perspective of Bubble? I think particularly if you were talking to someone who's wondering whether to invest their time and money into building their idea on this platform, what would you say?
I think you do have to think very carefully about whether Bubble is appropriate. So there are lots of other tools that could well do what you want to do, and is Bubble the right thing? Could you? I do a lot of stuff on Webflow, and that's for those things that I'm using Webflow for. Webflow is more than sufficient. I could do those things on Bubble. But what would be the point? Webflow, it does the job much quicker. But there's lots of things that I might want to do that Webflow wouldn't be appropriate for. So it's about making sure you're using Bubble for the right things. And there might be a better, equally cheap, equally fast way of doing it. So unless you're doing something super complicated, have a look at the other sort of lighter tools first, I would say. So that's not, I'm not saying something nasty about that, but I'm just saying use it appropriately, I think.
Thank you. Nigel?
I totally agree on that one. And I think my experience comes pre a lot of the more, so much stuff's happening at the moment. We've got Made with Frames, which you are, James and Greg are doing amazing things. Open Build's coming back. I was one of the first users of Open Build. Canvas has always been there from AirDev. So that what I want, my design skills are absolutely a zero. I can. The only way I can make things look good is to use Glide or software or things like that. And that the thing I love about Glide is probably the thing that I don't like about Bubble as much. Glide makes me look like I know what I'm doing, and I have no rights. The Glide app that we produce, and some of the stuff I've got in software, I'm not that good. It just makes me look so good in terms of design because it just does it for you. But I think now now you can probably do a lot of things really quickly using Frames or any of the other one. But I totally echo what Sam says. Unless you're really careful, you can spend a lot of time fiddling around with stuff around the edges. Use. And I don't necessarily think it's templates. I think it's using the big building blocks. The interesting thing that somebody revealed on... Did somebody reveal it on Twitter? They're like, hey, if you put this URL in... Actually, we probably got to say it. If you put this thing in the URL in your editor, you get this bubble blocks. So you get the...
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
The ability to have the... So, yeah, it's in beta at the moment, beta. But now it's got the ability to build these blocks and put this repeating group in or put this structure in here, that was always going to be the way forward. And I built something in one of the early things I built in Bubble. It's not even responsive. It's called building on Bubble, which was these little kind of blocks of stuff. So I think, which I'd never worked out how to get it to do it, i.e. copy and paste from things, say, deal with atomic fusion and all that kind of thing. Just doing amazing things in that space. What the bit that it's going to be, I wouldn't want to put anybody off because I've spent an awful lot of time breaking Bubble, of doing things which it just didn't want to do, or I've hacked it around, or I've done horrible things. I'm old enough in Bubble to remember that the Emmanuel running the forum and running all the support, which was such a fantastic business model where they knew the pain points because he was absolutely, the co-founder was absolutely there on the forums and we were going, I did this, it all broke. I think the current one is at real scale. So when I'm talking about scale, I'm talking about hundreds, 200,000 as a minimum in terms of records. Back-end data processing. I believe they are. I know that they're doing a lot more, but you try to delete 500,000 records in your dev database because you need to start again, and you can spend you can spend an hour sat there kind of doing it. So that kind of bulk stuff is difficult. That doesn't mean that Bubble can't handle millions and millions of rows. And I've put millions of rows into things really quite quickly with some APIs. And Bubble just flew. We had we had the right database structure, and we were pummeling the database and writes and then reads and things like that. But when you come to I need to delete this, or I need to change 250,000 rows relatively quickly, that's when we got into a little bit of we were really pushed the edges. So that's why things like Xano exist now, and I think there's a big kind of Bubble with Xano as the back end. That's where I would be a little bit wary if you want to transform overnight 1 million rows. Just need to be a little bit careful about how Bubble does that kind of thing, recursive workflows and things like that. But it's absolutely going to get better.
Thank you. Thanks again for the level of detail and putting some numbers to it. I've certainly seen some Twitter conversations where people are apprehensive about scale, and it's often hard to kind of refer to something solid, because I think the key point that you made, which is a database well structured, will allow you to do the massive numbers, but if it's poorly structured, then you're setting yourself up to really struggle. Just coming to the end of our conversation, going back to Beecard, what are some of your ambitions for the business going forward? Let's go with that. And then I've just got one further question to close. So looking ahead, ambitions for Beecard. What would you like to share?
So it's using everything we've learnt, because we've learnt an awful lot, not just from the technical side of things, but in terms of the more sort of business side of gift cards, and actually go down the route of white labelling. So that's something that we're currently exploring, and it'd be a case of reusing an awful lot of what we've already created. Tech and knowledge as well, and even expanding sort of further into other types of technology that will support this sector, because as Nigel mentioned, it's quite underserved, it's quite nichey, but providing kids with activities that help them in so many different ways is important, and there's so many thousands of small businesses in this sector as well, so they're quite cash strapped, understandably. So providing affordable, fast tech is something that will help so many businesses, and is entirely achievable. And that's the amazing thing about using Bubble, is it can bring the tech from big corps into much smaller niche industries. So that's where I think we're going with it.
Yeah, and I think what we can bring is similarly being cash strapped. I mean, we had the money from the innovation grant to build it, but on our ongoing costs, we spend an awful lot of time just trying to, how can we lean this out? How can we Zapier suddenly put their prices up, right? Okay, how can we an extra $20 or $30 dollars a month for something is not sustainable for us. So we spend a lot of time trying to automate, trying to get the cheapest possible service cost, the cheapest possible acquisition cost. And I think that's what we can bring to other people by white labeling this is, we haven't just done it and created it. What we've done is create the cheapest possible version of this for you. Because and you could spend a fortune doing all of these things. We do it cheaply.
Great, thank you. Finally, just to wrap up, again, be fascinating to hear the different perspectives from the different points you are in your bubble journeys. What's the one thing that you wish someone had told you, this is the way to do it, before you got started on building an idea in Bubble?
I wish they'd told me that 5 years ago. Seriously, that's it. Just feels like I've wasted so much time, money, and energy, and stress, so much stress, not being able to do the things I want to do. So I just wish they'd told me that 5 years.
And from my perspective, it's purely there. Do some marketing first. Have an audience to sell into. Don't just have the idea. Here's an old Bubble story. One of the first people I picked up as a client, they were doing what was basically Facebook for knives. So it was, and it sounds like being from a European UK perspective. That sounds a bit shocking, but in the US, concealed carry, open carry, that knives are definitely a thing, and I had absolutely no idea that this was, that you had your collection of knives, and that what you had and which they were, and people would swap them, and you would have like a instead of a Facebook group for the knives, you would have the thing on this particular site. So we built it, or we sort of got most of the way through building it. They had an Instagram account. I still believe they have an Instagram account before they'd even started with 10,000 followers. So we were building something that they already had 10,000 followers for the thing that we had not even built. So they had another product in the space, so they knew their space, but they built the audience. And when I was building, my first idea or ideas, I had, I barely had me on board. So I really wish I'd kind of started with that. I'm going to get a bunch of people in advance who are going to be very excited about this, and that's not whether you use Bubble or not. It doesn't matter. Is to try to do the marketing first. Is there a Bubble thing I wish somebody had told me? Bubble's learning curve was really easy for me because there was no responsive engine, there was no API connector. I did some of the first. I was beta testing that, so Bubble was really easy in initially, but I don't mean that. It was hard, and even though now there was just mind-boggling things, the plugins and the server-side stuff, most of which I can't get around, but it was a learning curve when you didn't have half of the stuff it's got now. So I wish somebody said, look, give yourself a break on learning all of this stuff. This is really, it's hard. You can do almost anything, but you will never, I don't know anybody that knows it all. And some people know bits of it incredibly well. Some people know other bits of it. Be kind to yourself and know that you are not always going to be all over Bubble as a tool.
Well, that's a great place to end. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you, Nigel, for just sharing. Yeah, so much information, and just thank you. Before I hit stop on the recording, are there any URLs, maybe for Beecard, any social accounts that you'd like to plug if people want to find out more about what we talked about or what you're currently working on? Please plug them.
So getbeecard.com. That's all about Beecard, clearly. And if you want to see some pictures of me and Nigel, we're on roserock.tech, and there's also a little portfolio on there of what we've been working on, including Beecard.
So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm Nigel Godfrey. In fact, I'm so old in technology that pretty much everything I've got is my name. I had a conversation with okay, so what's your handle on whatever it is? Nigel Godfrey. So what you're on Twitter? Nigel Godfrey. So I'm Nigel Godfrey on pretty much everything. But Beecard's Beecard, get Beecard. We're all over that.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. And thanks, Nigel. It sounds like you're the person to follow on Twitter to get in on the early adopters. If you're into sharing the current platform that you're exploring, if people want to grab those the simple usernames and tags for themselves. Great. Thank you so much